Thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation here. My name is Christian Barths. I'm the co-chair of the UK National Committee of the International Council of Museums. Today we're introducing a new series of lunchtime events with a focus on protecting cultural heritage under threat. There are many situations, of course, that can pose a threat to heritage, both movable and immovable. Accidents, natural disasters, but also deliberate destruction. We've seen many museums and their collections destroyed over the years. One of the most highly publicized cases was the recent fire at the National Museum of Brazil. One of ICOM's focus points has been, over many years, to assist with planning for emergencies and assisting with recovery from disasters. Naturally, this includes providing help in times of war, recently in Syria and currently in Ukraine. Accordingly, ICOM has developed instruments to enable this, and in today's conversation, we're going to hear about some of these instruments and how they're being used to protect cultural heritage in Ukraine. Accordingly, our new series of events, initially 3 focusing on Ukraine, has been developed in conjunction with the Ukrainian Institute London, whose director, Olesya Kromaichuk, is joining us here today, and the Ukrainian Institute in Kiev, whose Director of Culture, Tetiana Filevska, also joins us. Warm welcome to both of you. For future events, we're planning to focus on conflicts and damage through natural disasters elsewhere in the world. These talks are free to access, but you can, via the Eventbrite page for these events today and the following 2, make a donation, which we'll pass on to our friends and colleagues at ICOM Poland, who have a fund to support Ukrainian museum professionals fleeing the war in Ukraine. The talks today are being moderated by Maria Blazinski, whom it is my pleasure to introduce now. Maria is a heritage consultant and independent curator specializing in exhibitions and interpretation. Maria's father was Ukrainian and she still has friends and family living there. She's currently helping ICOM UK to coordinate initiatives that support museums in Ukraine, which earlier this year included providing assistance to get an entire lorry full of conservation materials from the UK delivered to Ukrainian museums. Over to you, Maria.
Thank you, Christian, that's really kind. Thank you for the introduction. It's an honour to be able to introduce such important speakers today. Sophie Delapierre, coming from ICOM Secretariat in Paris, and Anastasia Cheredchenko joining us from ICOM Ukraine in Kiev. I'm also pleased to announce a special guest and a late addition to the programme, Katya Belaya-Seltzer. In addition, we're delighted to be joined, as Christian said, by Olesya Kromaichuk from the Ukrainian Institute in London and Tetiana Filevska, the cultural director of the Ukrainian Institute in Kiev. Olesya and Tetiana have been instrumental in supporting this programme of talks. So first, some housekeeping. We're delighted to welcome the speakers from UK and beyond. We've turned off cameras and muted mics for those watching the talks. There will be time for question and answers at the end, so please post your questions at any time in the chat and we'll be picking those up. And the session is being recorded for the ICOM UK website. Closed captions are available if you want to turn those on. So today's discussion will focus on the looting of Ukrainian cultural heritage and the loss of professional expertise. Our first speaker is Sophie Delapierre, Head of Heritage Protection at the ICOM Secretariat in Paris. Sophie joined there in 2017. She's the head of the protection department. In this position, she leads operational programs, training and awareness, raising activities related to the protection of cultural heritage. She regularly represents ICOM at international conferences on the strategies to fight the illicit trafficking of cultural property. Previously at ICOM, she was the legal advisor and institutional affairs coordinator. Sophie is responsible for producing the Red Lists, which are a practical tool to help curb the illegal trafficking of cultural objects. We'll put a link in the chat while Sophie is talking, because the red lists are available for anybody to download for free. So you can pick those up. So thank you, and over to you, Sophie. You should be able to share your screen.
Thank you very much, Maria, and I also extend my thanks to ICOM UK for the kind invitation today. I'm just checking why I share my screen here. Okay, and here. I hope you're able to see it.
Yes,
Okay.
it's fine, Sophie. It's showing up now, well.
Okay, good. Well, so if everybody see and hear, it's perfect. So I have now, my goal now is to do 10 minutes on the red list. It's quite short and sportive, but we will make it. And also the idea is to introduce you to this tool, and like that, my colleague Anastasia also present today, and it's an honor to co-present with her. We'll then focus on the work our Ukrainian colleagues make on the preparation of the red list Ukraine. But first, these a few information about finally why ICOM is doing that. Is the only things ICOM is doing regarding the fight against traffic, and then a few more words on the red list per se. What I always say when I'm doing a conference everywhere is that if it's true that it's topic really politically interest now, but ICOM is fighting on this topic for the very beginning. ICOM created in 1946, first General Assembly. You can see that they take a strong position against illegal excavation. It can seem far, but when you know that from day one until today, ICOM has been deeply involved in this question of fighting traffic. And just a few examples coming from the archives is that, for example, at the time they had kind of a newsletter and publication on periodical review, and you can see that at the time they made notice for stolen objects. Here it's 1969, and that was how at the time ICOM was another kind of, was not 50,000 members, it was far less than that. How they were preoccupied and how they wanted to work on this topic, and well, at the time they chose to go from notice of theft in museum. Then generally I do 2 hours conference only this topic, so I really reduce here. Then notice were not enough, and in the 90s, after also the code of ethics, they begin to do this publication that people are still speaking to me about this publication today. There were the 100 objects disappeared, missing objects, sorry, and they made for several regions. But you can imagine that to do a book like that, collecting information, preparing the edition and publish it, well, and only 100 objects when the traffic today is thousands and thousands. It was good at the time, it raised the topic, but clearly at the end, it was not maybe the best tool to do that. And also it was important that to know that the thinking were also changing, because clearly museum can be victim of theft for sure, but so there is all this security improvement that need to be done and still are encouraged at ICOM, but also museum people, and I will show you later a diagram of our partners. Museum have really something to bring in the fight, their expertise. It's question about investigation, police, customs, you know, they are not artisans, it's normal, that's not the job, but they need to rely on people. And more in every country, we encourage museums to be open to such cooperation with police, even it's not an easy job to do, but it's important that the involvement of the civil society on this matter. So that is something to keep in mind too, to understand well the red list, this expertise that the museum community can bring in this fight. Then also it's important to tell me that now I'm trying to put the context, how we arrived there, but it's important to know that today I'm speaking about red list, but when I do a presentation, I show generally these 4, I explain these 4 tools because they are working together, the object ID to describe the object and prepare an inventory, all the rules in the Code of Ethics regarding acquisition, documentation, research of provenance, fundamental in our work every day. Then the Red List, one of the practical tools. Another tools, a little bit less known because it's more new, is the observatory website. Today, I just go on the Red List. So let's go for it for a few minutes more. Red List, it's really important to understand, and that's how museum community changed from the book they made about stolen object. Stolen means police, means database. Let's say it's the easiest part to do, is done. We have the inventory object, it have been seen stolen, it have to go to the police to be put in the database. But the traffic, it's really much more in terms of percentage about illicit traffic from excavations. And of course, if it's excavated and loot, never inventoried, how can you report to the police? So that's the idea of the Red List. Those are not stolen objects. Those are, it's a huge work we do with specialists to say, to choose objects that are vulnerable, in demand on the market, and at risk of being protected by law and at risk of being trafficked. Every single object is in a museum, but they look like objects currently traveling illegally. So where a police or customs see this kind of object, here I have an example, here. Even they see this kind of example of object, this one is not stolen, but this one, expert community of the West Africa told the world that if you are a police, a custom, an auction house, a collector, a museum, and you want to acquire this, us, ICOM, we said that this object is vulnerable, in demand on the market, protected by the legislation of this country, so it's a red flag. Check the documentation, check the provenance. You have to do your due diligence task, and Red List help you to do that. If you acquire without checking, and then after you have a problem, you cannot say that you were in good faith. We were telling you that. So that's really important to understand. They are not stolen objects. They are vulnerable and distributed in the world to tell you. And I have to go quicker. Red List is not only about categorization, it's also recalling the legislation. So that's why it's in the Red List first page, generally. I show you here one example about West African, I choose stick in like that. You can see how it is with objects that are, put in a quite visible way, attracting the eye. That is one old one. It was for Afghanistan, but we are still working with it for the moment, given the situation, and also important to see the translation we do. That's another screenshot. It's important also, and maybe I think Anastasia will speak about that. We have two types of Red List, the normal one and then the emergency one. The normal one, they are scheduled in our work plan. And the emergency can go through it because of a war, because of a natural catastrophe or any other emergency. So that's why before 24th of February, we were not really speaking about a Red List for Ukraine, but unfortunately, because of the situation, it appeared after the invasion and in coordination and agreement with ICOM Ukraine that we decided to do one. But when you see my work plan of December 2022, that was not in. But the Red List Brazil was in because it was scheduled. So we have two types. Then Ase Maria, if you go to the ICOM website, you go to resource, and then directly you can find the Red List database, and then you have every Red List in every language that we have. You can download perfectly free and use it, no problem. If you need paper, you call ICOM and we send you. That's what I said, the different kind of user. We always speak about police and custom because they are more known, the usual, but we also distribute to auction houses, collectors, museum. Every people who need, we send it. It's part of our job. Because I always sense where we do a Red List, when we publish it, we make it 50% of the work. The other 50% is make it known, distribute, etc. That is a new way to publish it recently, and there are more and more exhibitions that show and that make awareness raising for the public about this problematic of traffic, which is not really known by the public in general, more and more, but need to be done more. And that was an exhibition we stayed 1 year in the Louvre and presented pieces that were seized at the customs, by the French customs. And during the investigation, that can take months, and decision of the tribunal, during all these months, rather than to put it in somewhere, they decided to show it in a museum with the documentation showing that it had been seized. And it was the way with the red list red. They asked us to use it, and we agree, of course. And it was the way for the museum, then another role of the museum, make it known by the public, our work of pedagogy and education. And it was this exhibition in the Louvre with a few pieces, but it was really interesting. Another, and I will finish by that, how a red list can be used. It's a recent example in the Netherlands, where the investigators seized a few objects. They are here. There's 7 here. And they used the red list, they told us, and it was, and they saw comparison. They could see similar objects from the red list, so they began the investigation, and indeed it was they also, I come back here, when they saw the similarities with the red list, the investigators went to the museum expert. So once again, the role of museum to do the red list, but also later to help the law enforcement agencies, and they confirmed the origin of the object, and then investigation, construction of the file, and finally here a picture of the restitution to Iraq. So again, you see how a museum can be involved in such a situation. My last slide, sorry, I was really quick, but I'm open to any question. My last slide is to say that from day one, we work with other organizations, mainly UNESCO and UNIDROIT, because they both, UNESCO has the 1970 Convention on Illicit Traffic and UNIDROIT 1995 Convention on Stolen Objects and Legally Exported Objects. Then we worked with Interpol and YCO because they are representative of the main law enforcement, customs and police. And then ICOM as an NGO, but also part of it, because we work together on this topic. My personal opinion is that from all the time, museum has a big role to play in the fight against traffic, but they are the only one with such diverse profile. Police, they investigate, customs, they control. UNESCO and UNIDROIT, they encourage the ratification of convention. Us, it's completely different, because we can be a victim of thefts. We can be the secret expert of the police on an investigation. We can be the creator of tools. We can be the lobby for the government to work better on this question. We are part of the traffic. Let's be clear, sometimes, if we know every time we see in the news some museum that acquire some object that they didn't have to. So us, our profile in this area as an expert is really, really different. And that's why I think that museum community should really embrace this topic much more than actually. It's true that red lists are our main tool. It's not the only one, but it's a working tool, extremely recognized. I could have shown you also a slide when you can see the mention of red lists in United Nations Security Council reports. I could have shown you mention of red list about Europe regulation. I could have shown you a slide about red list mention is national legislation in Germany. So this tool is really strong, recognized, but museum community should continue to promote it, distribute it, and make it. And now I stop because I know the floor is for my colleague Anastasia, that I would like to seize the occasion to thank, because her work in the last month with with her team was fantastic. I apologize because I wrote to her so many times to know about the red list and can we meet and where are you, and in the same times you were doing amazing things to protect the collection of your country. So I know that it was something, and most biggest effort I ask you to do that with together. I really hope that now that we see the final step, you are happy with it. And but I'm really, I personally really proud that I worked with you on that. And I didn't speak at all about the Red List Ukraine because I wanted to keep all of it for you. I just give the context, and now it's the floor is yours, and thank you to all of you for listening to me. If you have any question, please ask me later or by email or whatever. I'm at your entire disposal. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Sophie. That's such a fantastic presentation and such an important thing for everybody to realise, and just to raise the awareness of the red lists and how we can all help and be aware of them, as looking for red flags and finding out and making sure that we actually do our due diligence when we're acquiring objects as well. So thank you for those reminders. Passing on to our next speaker. We're really honoured to be able to welcome Anastasia Chernenko. Sorry, I haven't pronounced your name very well. I should do because of my background. So Anastasia is the Vice Chair of ICOM Ukraine. She's a historian and an expert in Ukrainian cultural heritage with a focus on the history of the Ukrainian Soviet Republic, museums and monument protection system under the Soviet regime. She's also author of over 30 publications dedicated to the history of museums. Since February 2022, Anastasia has been a project manager for the museum department at the Mistetsky Arsenali, the National Culture of Arts and Museums complex in Kiev. Since April 2015, she's been a research fellow at the NGO Center for Museum Development in Kiev. And since 2004, she's been working with the National Reserve Kiev-Peshchersk Lavra in Kiev, a unique caves monastery complex dating from the 11th century. So Anastasia, you're an incredibly busy woman. We're incredibly honored to have you here today. We know that also that you're suffering from you're under an air raid siren at the moment. So we're doubly grateful for you to be here, and we know that you're having power cuts too. So because of that, you've given us you've issued in advance a presentation just as a backup. So with that, we'll use the presentation, but if there's anything you want to say beforehand, do.
Yes, thank you so much, Maria. I want to say only thank you so much for your invitation. Thank you so much, ICOM UK and Ukrainian Institute for invitation, and thank you so much all your public that spent time for our discussion. Thank you so much. And if you have whatever questions after my presentation, please, I will answer with my pleasure.
Thank you. I'll just reiterate to everybody here that please do post questions in the chat, because there will be time to answer those at the end. So I think now Dana behind the scenes is getting the presentation ready. And apologies, there will be there's a grey block. Most of those grey blocks should disappear, but there's a grey block at the bottom, which is the Zoom tools. So we'll try to get those out of the way.
First of all, I would like to thank the people of Great Britain for the help and support at all levels that you have given us during this full-scale war. This degree of your support is precious to us. This is something we will never forget. Thank you so much. And now for the agenda for today's meeting, the Ukrainian culture heritage red list is exceptional. It's an emergency red list, and if I am not mistaken, this is the 8th of its kind. However, it appears that this is the first time that the red list is prepared not after the war has ended, but during it. Furthermore, it was created in a conscious period of time. Therefore, I think our experience as whole may not be relevant to everyone. And personally, I sincerely hope that such an experience will not continue in the 21st century. Will not be useful to other countries in the civilized world. And this will be the final emergency red list created throughout the war. On the other hand, there are several points shared by everyone who produced a red list under all circumstances. Sure, a red list for Ukrainian heritage is based on 3 primary principles: cultural heritage at risk, protected by national and international legislation, and the black market demanded. Obviously, as in other cases developing the red list, we also had huge difficulty picking typical samples of items. But we obviously had selection criteria both general for everyone and quite unique. So our focus was on museum collection in the temporarily occupied territories, what was stored there and what had already been taken away by the Russians with support of the military. I'm talking about the museums, for example, of Mariupol and Melitopol. Recently, the Russians seized a valuable part of the collection of the Kherson Art Museum. According to eyewitnesses, it was loaded into trucks without proper packaging. And right now, this collection in the Simferopol Museum in Crimea. Also, we analyzed what was looted, particularly in March in the central part of Ukraine. And as well as what was in demand among Russians and Russians museums in the collection of Crimean museums since 2014 and until now. Next point, Ukraine has a rich, complex and complicated history. Other countries which made up red list before were clearly faced with a similar issue. At the same time, some heritage is extremely important and significant for the citizens of Ukraine. Such as artifacts from turbulent 20th and 21st centuries, but Russian invaders destroy such testimonies to our identity. And here we have no tools to fight that right now. The next point is our national diversity. Ukraine is a big multicultural and multi-ethnic country, and this was also reflected in the Ukrainian Red List. In particular, the Ukrainian Red List presents subjects from the 3 main faiths: whose communities live in Ukraine, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Also, Ukrainian Red List also presents items from different ethnic groups. Ukrainians are the main and autochthonous indigenous population of Ukraine, and the largest ethnic community on its territory. But at the same time, indigenous peoples in Ukraine have traditionally included the Crimean Tatars, Karayims, and Krimchaks. This status is determined by Ukrainian legislation. Their homeland, Crimea, is, as you know, is currently occupied, and their heritage has been under several threats since 2014. And of course, it's crucial that we showcase objects and draw worldwide attention to their cultural heritage at risk. Crimean peoples do not have an ethnically connected states. That is, they don't have their own state, as do other ethnic minorities in Ukraine. Actually, no other country would act in their best interest. Thus, it's Ukrainian responsibility to save Crimean people cultural history, which I understress. It's also part of the global heritage. At the same time, for us, was important to display pieces of gently Ukrainian culture, particularly folk and naive art. Next, archaeological artifacts also received special attention. On the black market, the archaeology goods are in high demand, and there have been cases of illegal trafficking in the past. Now the risk increased dramatically when we do not control a part of our territory with a strong archaeological cultural layer. Next, it's paintings, which are traditionally also very popular on the black market. And now I would like to add a few words about process of working on a red list. This work began in early April. We started act after the Russian troops retreated from the suburbs of Kiev and the region overall. As a result of defensive actions of the armed forces of Ukraine, it wasn't so easy. I must say, overall, it was a challenge to work with various museum and library experts at such extreme time, and even in the beginning, experts were scattered, and some of them were outside the country at the time. Additionally, collections were packed, museums were prepared for evacuation, and sometimes the photos that could be accessed were inadequate quality for publication. It was necessary to solve such problems. And here I wanted to thank my Ukrainian colleagues who, in such extremely difficult time, took part in the creation of the Red List. At time when Yes, their lives were in real danger. They had to devote all their time to the care and preservation of the collection of the institution. Thank you so much. And I would also like to thank ICOM Foundation, ICOM Secretariat, and Executive Director Peter Keller for financial and organizational support. And also, I want to express my big gratitude to Sophie Delaprem and her colleagues who turned to us, ICOM Ukraine, to start the process of compiling this list and providing organizational support all this time. Thank you so much, Sophie, Helen, and Ted. I also want to note that effective international professional network is crucial. This is demonstrated by example of compiling our red list for Ukrainian culture heritage. And actually, in this way, we inform the world about the huge danger in which the cultural heritage of Ukraine is right now. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Anastasia, for such an edifying talk and an introduction to your valuable work and the work that you've been doing with Red Lists. So thank you so much. One question that I do have before we move on to our next speaker is whether we have a date yet for the Red List for Ukraine to be issued. I believe it's imminent. And I know that it's been done in record time as well. So I don't know, Anastasia or Sophie, whether you want to say something about that.
Who first?
Thank you, Anastasia. Well, I always say that it's the drama of simple tool. They look simple, and so for the very beginning, people say, "Oh, in a few weeks it will be." No, to do something simple, believe me, it takes a huge time, and then after that we have also the problem of, you know, administrative things about the copyright and all these kind of things. It's nearly there. I know I said always that, but the final version is the graphics is done, and now we are just doing little details. It's always the Ukrainian team, and it's completely normal that have the global look, the final, and then after we prepare how we will publish it. But it's coming. It's coming. It's really something like really soon. But it's true also that in the last days, not looking for excuse, but let's say the truth. Between September and October, between the hair raids that damage museum, and in the damaged museum, Anastasia is nicely not saying it, but within the museum touched by the hair raids, some museums are partner of the Red List. So of course the person were going to the museum to protect what can be protected, and cannot do in the same time as virtual meeting, etc. So, and then now in these months, it's all the blackouts and lack of electricity. So we have to understand that it's super complicated. And still, I know it seems like I'm taking the occasion. I am flabbergasted by the incredible dedication of ICOM Ukraine. And it's not because Anastasia is there, even if she was not there, I would say. And it's incredible, because to do such work in so little time with all of these obstacles that we had to jump, it's amazing. And I hope, I saw the final version, and Anastasia too. I really hope people will recognize, and also what we hope it will be useful, because many organizations, UNESCO is calling for us, Interpol is asking for us, you know, and a researcher person or person who are preparing projects for fundraising. A lot of persons are coming to us saying, where is the Red List? We need it. We need to see what we have to protect. So it's coming. It's really there. It's coming.
Thank you. And what we can say to the attendees today is to keep an eye on the ICOM website and ICOM UK announcements as well. So as soon as it's out there, we'll be letting people know that it's available too. So if I may move on to our third speaker today, we've got one more speaker, a special guest, a late addition as well, so apologies we didn't have time to include your name, Katja, on the announcement, but Katja Belaya-Selzer is an independent paintings conservator who runs a private practice in Buckinghamshire. She trained at the Courtauld Institute, worked as a national specialist advisor for the National Trust. Katja was born in Ukraine and has family there. And since Russia's first invasion in 2014, she set up the Ukraine-UK Cultural Heritage Initiative with the help of a British Council grant to connect Ukrainian and UK conservation specialists. More information about this initiative can be found on Katja's website. We'll put that in the chat. Since the full-scale invasion in February this year, Katja has helped 17 Ukrainian conservators find sponsors and employment in the UK. So Katja, we'd love it if you could tell us a little bit about your work. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. And just quick introduction that these are two of the Ukrainian conservators, Valerie and Agneta. They have come from Dnipro and Kiev, and they're here via the sponsorship scheme, and they're working in my studio right now. So I will share the screen. Oh, 1 second. Oh, how do I do that? There we go. Share. I hope you can see that. So the oh, how do I make it all one? Do you know?
We can see it, but yes, I think if you go into view, you can make it a single page.
Maybe we should just stick to how it is.
Yeah, that's
Sorry, you should press this from right side. It is the second
This one?
small screen with
No? Right. Let's just crack on. Sorry. The yeah, as you mentioned, 2014, Russia invaded, and I had family there and connections. I wanted to do something, and this initiative started off, and it is a grassroots initiative, and we've had an incredible amount of support and help from 2014, from the British Council, from different associations here in the UK, different partners in Ukraine, and a great number of amazing volunteers everywhere. I've put down here myself and Valerie, who's here, because well, Valerie's just been instrumental from the beginning. It all started with a trip to Kiev that I helped organize for the British Association of Painting Conservator Restorers. And we went to see various conservation departments in Kiev. And as always, conservators love to talk about what they do, look at the details and ask lots of questions, exchange information. That was quite very eye-opening about what Ukrainian culture is. And we found a lot in common about our approaches. And we found a lot of things that are different, like the materials that we use, traditional versus synthetic materials, for example. But on the whole, conservators in discussion thought, yes, we are speaking the same language. Then, thanks to the Creative Europe grant, we were able to bring a group of conservators from Ukraine to the UK and organize a series of visits for them to the National Portrait Gallery and the V&A and private studios. Then we had a series of talks raising awareness about Ukrainian culture. And here's one organized by the University of Cambridge Hamilton Carr Institute about migration and exchange of ideas and cultures. So we were talking about the Soviet Union, sort of from the Soviet Union to now, and migration of ideas, repressions, and it's all very similar ideas, very similar situation we are facing today. Now, since February, we have been able to help 17 Ukrainian conservators from various disciplines and various institutions, senior conservators and students, come to the UK, find them sponsors and jobs and training. And some of these sponsors are also giving employment, which is incredible. We have helped them connect with sponsors. We have helped them with CV writing. There is a WhatsApp group which all of the conservators are in, so they share information about networking, events, training opportunities, practical things, terminology, English weather. Then we have also very useful tools for networking have been the IIC, who have offered free membership to all conservators wherever they are in the world. Specifically in the UK, the British Association of Painting Conservative Restorers have been amazing. They've extended free memberships to all the Ukrainian conservators. We have been organizing visits. So here they are, top left at the National Gallery. The British Library, we have been to the V&A. The next one, I think, is the Royal Collection and Windsor Castle. So that's an amazing opportunity for colleagues to meet, exchange knowledge, and to feel a part of the conservation family, and also get a lot of experience and connections for when they go back to Ukraine. Here are some of the projects which the conservators have been doing: in situ projects in historic houses and private trusts, Charleston Trust and English Heritage. Here is the conservators in my studio below, working on various things. So it's a whole array of practical experiences that they are able to gain here, which they'll be able to, one, share with their colleagues back home, and two, when they go home, they'll be able to sort of have more tools to their in their toolbox, basically. Now, the other thing that we help them have access to is academic training. So chemistry for conservators, environmental course, which is the National Trust staff, but they have very kindly extended it to Ukrainian colleagues for free. Valerie here has done courier training at the National Gallery, which is also for their staff, but they've kindly extended it to Ukrainian conservator. So this kind of stuff we want to do more of. Quest, Agneta is the recipient of the Quest Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust. So all of those amazing things that we want to carry on doing. And I just want to mention also the material aid. So we are working together with the Kyiv Academy and the National Center of Restoration Research to provide them with essential conservation equipment for their students and for their staff. So we're in the process of doing that. Valerie here is in the process of putting together the first Anglo-Ukrainian conservation dictionary in collaboration with IIC. So she is looking into applying for a grant in order to be able to, and finding a translator. So it's quite a complicated project. But at the moment we have started by just publishing it on my website for any conservator to use, because one problem is a lack of technical language and a lack of a dictionary.
Thank you so much, Katia. I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to wind up quite quickly, because we want to leave some time for questions.
Great. I think that's all I wanted to say. So yeah, more opportunities, more training opportunities, but I think we're getting there.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I've put your website into the chat, so if anybody else is interested in contacting Katia, or if there's anybody working in a museum or gallery in the UK that could use the help of Katia's team, please do contact her directly. So we do have a little bit of time for questions, so please do put questions into the chat. We've got one here, which is from Mark D. Thank you to ICOM for arranging this series of talks, and thank you especially to the speakers. My question is that given reports of extensive looting by Russian units as they withdraw from the west bank of the Dnipro in Kherson, how can ICOM and curatorial staff keep up with the extent of material being lost? So very apt question. Anastasia, I don't know whether you want to say something about
Thank you for this question. First of all, this is of course witnesses of local museum employees from such museums, and of course of local communities witnesses as well. But we of course we need some of monitoring group who actually could on a regular basis to check and control, of course not control, but just check this process. And actually in the conference in Prague, general conference in Prague, we were speaking with a new board of ICOM to create such monitoring groups with different goals, to monitoring also illegal traffic from or looting museum collection and trafficking to Russia part, and also to check such activity of Russian museum as propaganda exhibition based on Ukrainian materials. And right now, I think we are on middle of this process, or before start this process, to create such international monitoring group. We will see.
Thank you.
Does it make sense?
Yes. And there's a thank you to you in the chat as well. And Mark, thank you. I see that you've also put in the chat a link to a book that people might be interested in, recent work on the Russian weaponization of cultural heritage. So thank you for that link as well. Please do put your questions in the chat. We've got about another 5 minutes to go. One of the things that I was interested in, and this might be for you, Katia, is about setting up the network for Ukrainian conservators. What's your top tip for whether there's anybody here that would be interested in setting up something similar for Ukrainian curators?
That would be fantastic, because curators and conservators work together, and we love working together and should do that more. It started off with creating a WhatsApp group or whatever platform for communication, because then you have this sort of snowball effect of one person telling another person, they might be able to pass on that information amongst their colleagues. But it does take somebody to monitor, administrate it, which is myself, and I have Valerie who helps with a lot of organization. Then we have a lot of volunteers, ICOM volunteers and BPCA volunteers, and people that take on different roles. So it's identifying who has what strength and what interest and creating that group of people that can help you.
Thank you. That's really, really helpful. I was going to say that if there are people here in this group today that are interested in setting up a similar group for curators, then please get in touch and we'll put you in touch together and see what we can do. We are running out of time, so apologies. We could talk about this for a long time. I've just put in the chat again a link to a donation. If anybody has the means to do so, please make a donation to this link. All donations will be transferred to the ICOM Poland for their fund to support Ukrainian museum professionals. So we're providing these talks for free, but we're hoping that people will make donations instead. So that just leaves us really to wrap up and to thank all of our speakers for coming today, and to pass on to Christian to say a few last words.
Thank you so much. This has been really super interesting. I just want to say a quick thank you before everybody leaves to our partners, especially the Ukrainian institutes in Kiev and in London, for supporting this initiative of our 3 events. So there are 2 more to come. Thank you also to everyone attending today and joining us during your lunch breaks. And also thanks to Dana Andrew for technical and logistical support in the background there. So please keep an eye out on the next couple of events as well that we've got coming up in the next 2 months. So the next one is on Wednesday, the 30th of November. And we're going to be talking about decolonizing Ukrainian cultural heritage, with speakers including Mel Bach, the head of collections and academic liaison and the Slavonic specialist at Cambridge University Library, and Tatiana Filewska, who I think is here today as well, the creative director at the Ukrainian Institute in Kiev and a specialist in Ukrainian avant-garde. So it'd be great if you could find the time again to join us for this event and the following then. We hope you enjoyed the talk. We'd be delighted to receive any feedback. And if you were able to sign up for future talks, just a gentle reminder again, and Ria's posted just the link in the chat there again. If you were able to make any donations, they will go to our Ukrainian colleagues and friends to support our Polish friends who are supporting Ukrainian refugees from the cultural heritage sector in Poland itself. So thank you very much again, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.